could tell us about the deal. Like, what is it that we need to know about Open LMS, acquiring eThink? Like, how long has this been in the making? Like, was this like a sweetheart deal that happened over a weekend, or was this like, 10 months of arm wrestling? Or, I mean, this has been your vision.
It was a cold night in London 7 years ago, and my phone rang, and on the other end of it was Brian Carlson. No, I mean, that is actually probably the true beginning of this. Brian and I, we've been talking about doing something like this for, I don't know, Brian, what, 8 years, 7 years?
Yep.
Something like that. Both in a lot of different forms. There was a point where, I thought about leaving Blackboard and joining eThink. There were other times that Blackboard looked at buying eThink when I thought Blackboard might do what we're doing now at LTG, but the timing just was really good now. I mean, and I'll let Brian share more of his thinking. It's more his story than mine, but I see, what we're trying to accomplish here, Stephen. We want to create the world leader in professional Moodle delivery and services, and somebody that can compete on a global scale with the Blackboard and Canvases and Docebos and all of the other players of the world. And that's been hard in the fragmented world. Bringing these together just brings so much experience, so much talent to the group. And then when you layer in the other products that LTG has, we think we've got a really interesting solution. So the sequence here, buying eCreators first gave us real firepower in the functionality part around their LearnBook platform, which is great for corporate learning, but also we're thinking has pretty significant overflow into education. Mm-hmm. And then with the sales and marketing and community presence that eThink has, and the additional talent that they have, and then also being so present in markets that are so important to us, like North America and the UK, this was just a great next step in what we're trying to do. And so it just made total sense from our perspective. Brian, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. There are tremendous opportunities around commercial services with Moodle, but there's also been tremendous challenges. And anybody who's followed the market for a long time realizes that there was a time that Moodle came into the scene and became quite dominant for a very short period. That didn't last very long. And part of the reason was there was a little bit of a vacuum in the market when they did that. And that vacuum got filled pretty quickly by better, more organized companies like Instructure's Canvas. And Moodle was always very close to it. And we would do bake-offs with the product. And it would be many times better to go with Moodle than with Canvas from a product perspective. And we'd feel confident we won the product side of it. The problem would come when they looked at how small we were and then not scaled, because they would say, we need 24/7 support. Okay, well, that's a little tricky for us. We're only, X number of people. We need custom development. Well, we don't specialize in that. Other partners do, but we don't. So what we found was there were a couple of really great companies out there that were doing this, and Moodle Rooms, which became Open LMS, and then was pulled out from Blackboard, where I think it was, quite frankly, a little bit handicapped, if we're being honest, was one of the best. I'd say it was the best at the time for sure. And then it still is the largest. It's a little bit larger than we are. We became the dominant force in the vacuum that they left after they sort of got a little bit away from their Moodle growth, and we're not a partner any longer, as everybody knows. And then there's another group that we really loved, which was eCreators. So and the reason we think that those groups were all good is we all did something sort of different. And there's a couple other groups out there that are also fantastic in the space. And I think that's what's really unique about the model is that you have all these little tiny partners that have started to grow a little bit, but not big enough, but they all do something really, really well. Mm-hmm. And what Phil's plan has always been is to take the best of all these smaller partners, put them together into something that is significantly more, not just powerful, but is providing better outcomes for clients. And I've had a ton of clients writing me. I've got a couple that just joined the Open LMS community, and they're texting me about it, and they're excited about it, and which was exactly what Phil was hoping for. And we're getting that feedback within the first 5 hours of the announcement. We just put out a lot of our client communications out in the last 2 hours, and they're texting me right now, which remarkable because they realize that although we're providing great services, we're still too small, where we don't have scale, we don't have a big community. Our community size just went up 500%.
Right. Yeah.
Our employee size went up, over 300%. These guys are excited, which is what we want. Our employees are excited because they have new opportunities. And then you got so that's a big part of it. And then the other part is that the product that our clients want is not just an LMS anymore.
Mm.
That's the part that's so key for me about LTG is that they want a solution, and we call it the e-learning ecosystem. And that e-learning ecosystem, we didn't have it all with just Moodle and a couple of partners. LTG does. They have almost everything you'd want, and we can now, and Phil's already done a lot of deep work on this, start to integrate really like an LXP, like an LRS. Rusticity is the leader in XAPI and SCORM. I mean, these are very leading pieces of that puzzle that they have under their umbrella. So for our clients, we can do things we couldn't do before. So I'm absolutely thrilled about the news, and it's been a long time coming, but it's been an exciting road, and today has been just absolutely great.
Fantastic. Christian, what are your most important questions? What right up the top of your head?
I have a couple, and forgive me if I'm sort of the party pooper in a very gentle way. So my first concern, I guess, or the concerns of the community is how does this affect your relationship with Moodle HQ? Like at the beginning, well, in the case with the creators, for a while it just seemed that things would not change, but very quickly it realized that it was not sustainable. So I'm curious about the relationship and like what's going forward, especially now with workplace.
Yeah, I mean, either of us can answer this one. I'm maybe the better one on this one right now, it sounds like, because I'm in the community right now, and I'll say the following. We're the largest partner in terms of royalty fees, largest by a very large amount. And one of the more important things to me was making sure we stayed a part of that community. And not just Phill, who was a big proponent of doing this, but every single executive at LTG had personal conversations with me, committing and wanting to partner with Moodle. So there's already been emails sent. We are committed to continue to paying in the royalties from eThink. And, there is a history here where I'm sure there's going to be some worries about what this, might look like. And there's always been sort of a little bit of a balance between commercial interests and the nonprofit that is Moodle HQ. But all the way up to the top of LTG, they have very much been specific that they want to stay a partner. And I hope that's how things play out. I mean, obviously, that's the plan, that's the hope, because I think it's better for both parties by a lot. I think that this is one of those things where you have a very competitive market and you need a very competitive commercial team to go out there and to support open source. And I'm saying this is the largest Moodle partner that there is. We weren't big enough by a lot. We weren't big enough, and we were the largest. So, and what that meant was I would lose deals over size. I'd have great opportunities that were entire countrywide deals that we couldn't win on a regular basis, and we would lose them to a Desire to Learn or a Blackboard or a Canvas. And same thing on the corporate side. In fact, on the corporate side, it was actually a little bit worse. The bigger the corporation was, the more they didn't want to play ball with a small company. They all want to see my financials and want to look for financial stability. And I felt like in my little world, I had that. At what they were looking for, I did not have that. It would, sort of, almost be like, well, that's nice, buddy, but that's not, really the stability we're looking for if you want to, work with Disney or 7-Eleven, which are clients of ours, now, and also clients of Open LMS. But now, and it was hard to get those because the scrutiny level is so big. It's not hard anymore. We've got everything we need to go out there and just make Moodle a household name in the pro ed sector. It's unbelievably great. So I hope Moodle HQ, will see that pairing together as a potential extreme positive here out of the situation.
Does that beg? Sorry, Christian, if I can just do a follow up there. I heard you say Learn Book, and you talked about the team that brings together all of these parts. You were a services provider. You're now one of the largest ecosystems out there. Is that where we see the vision going into, like, this is a real commercial offering, real, like you can, the ethos right now, right, with the Moodle community is, hey, it's open source. You kind of come in and you kind of make it what you want, and it's custom this, and it's there's that.
I'll take that one.
You see where I'm going with that, Phill?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what our clients really want, and one of the reasons that I think we're getting such positive feedback from the eThink clients and from our clients, is they want the best of both worlds, right? They want the benefits that open source brings, which range everything from a different kind of community than commercial providers, to the ability to, play with the source code and write plugins, to what's really a total cost of ownership argument. I mean, both eThink and Open LMS, and now with us together, if we don't do a great job of providing service to our clients, they can take their Moodle and go somewhere else.
Right.
Which is a real benefit if you're the CIO of a university, or if you're the chief learning officer of a corporation. And so they want that, but at the same time, they want somebody to pick up the phone when they call and they've got an emergency, and they want somebody that can help them design the best possible course and connect them with the right resources, or they know they need analytics, but they don't know how to do it, and they need somebody to help them do that. So they really want the best of both worlds, and I think that that's what we're trying to build here. We neither of us nor did eCreators fork the core Moodle code. Why? Because part of our belief is that our clients should demand great service of it, and if we don't give it of us, and then if we don't give it to them, they should be able to take their Moodle and go somewhere else. That's part of our value proposition, and it holds us to a really high standard when it comes to customer service. So yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to capture that, and to be fair, you've seen this in lots of other industries, right? I mean, Linux was always a great operating system, and then Solaris and Red Hat and others really made it viable at the enterprise level, and you still have a bunch of tinkerers and a bunch of coders that do stuff with it, but when you want to go big and get the benefits of both worlds, you use a commercially supported open source product, and I think this isn't really that different at all.
You and I have talked about this before too. I've always made the analogy against the WordPress community as well, right? I mean, WordPress runs a third of the internet, maybe more these days, and it's still, any Cindy or Tom, Tom can go and download it and build a website with it. But if you want to be a commercial enterprise, if you want to be serious about it, there are service providers out there that do a fantastic job. They're going to pick up the phone when you call, like, et cetera.
And just to be clear, there are other service providers of WordPress that do a horrible job, right? And that you can fire if they don't do a great job.
Exactly. Right? That's the thing too. I got a WordPress site. I can move it wherever I want, whenever I want.
That's the beauty of the model, and I think that matters a lot. Now, I do want to be really clear, though. We believe, and this was part of the conversations with Brian and with Dean at eCreators, we believe that there absolutely should be a free open source LMS that anybody can download and can go tinker with and can play with and can run it on their own if they want. That's an important part of this space. And what Moodle has done over the last 15 plus years is nothing short of phenomenal in bringing a great LMS at extremely low cost to parts of the world and to people that would have never been able to do it without that. That we can't do something that will affect and make that go away, because that's an important part of the ecosystem as well.
Christian, what's your next question?
Yeah, no, you mentioned that it seems like Open LMS is the Red Hat of e-learning in a way.
Potentially, I mean, there's lots of different analogies that you can make there, but yeah, I mean, the idea that there's a great platform and then you build on top of that and provide the support. Again, it's amazing how much people put a value in just being able to talk to somebody, and it's different. I mean, you can say, well, if you host Moodle yourself, you can just go post something to the forum. Okay, but if you've got a mission critical issue and you post something to the forum, what happens if the community doesn't respond for a week, right? Like, it's impossible.
In that same venue, I think Red Hat has the challenge that I think you have been facing, even Open LMS and eThink. And I remember our first interview with Brian, we talked about this. And how is it that some people have an idea of Moodle, and it's a very diverse idea given the diversity of ways in which you can get your own Moodle service. And it's the fact that there is not this unified idea. So for example, for Red Hat, and I think now for Open LMS is this challenge between, do we promote ourselves as Moodle? Do we promote ourselves as our own brand? And that has different implications in how the market or how the customers respond to that.
I think that's something that eThink has done fairly successfully over the last several years here for sure. But Brian,
but for example, there is the only sort of market tracker that I know of for ELMS is the one from Listed Tech from eLiterate. And well, they always put Moodle, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's a little misleading because in that Moodle, there's everything. There's the homebrew, there's the little company, and there's eThink.
Yep.
So I wonder if it would make more sense to have like a different fringe for Open LMS outside of Moodle. So people understand first how competitive are you compared to D2L, to Canvas, but also to stand out from the regular LMS Moodle.
Yeah, it is a challenge. There's no doubt that the tracking right now on Moodle related sites is a challenge because a lot of the self-hosted, are not necessarily as robust as some of the ones that are being hosted when you're talking about a closed source competitor. So I definitely agree that there's some questions on the market as to, exactly how well Moodle is doing because it is harder to track. Everything I've heard so far from LTG and from Phill has been the goal here is to not separate ourselves. The goal here is to work together with Moodle because I do believe we'll have a stronger outcome for both parties. If we are trying to break away, we start to think about forking, and that's not the goal here. The goal is to support the project that, quite frankly, as Phill said, is, in my opinion, one of the most successful and interesting ed tech projects of all time, and it's certainly in the open source world for ed tech. Not the first. I can't think of one that's up there. It's been impressive what it's done to disrupt, to provide access to areas that have inequality and access, which is pretty remarkable. It's done great there, but the market's shifted, and what the market needs right now is it's more competitive. It's way more competitive, and what I'm finding personally the most fascinating is in all the areas that are not traditional higher ed or not K-12. And we pivoted our business towards pro ed for a reason. It's because there's so much learning going on now outside the traditional colleges and universities that it takes sort of a different approach. And it traditionally takes a different commercial approach, not just in the product, but in the commercialization of how you're going out to the market. And for me right now, I think that is the most interesting because there's alternative pathways now. People aren't always looking at traditional colleges. We're starting to get a lot of alternative pathway type, clients. So much innovation and disruption is happening, especially we cannot forget COVID. I mean, you can't get on an interview and not talk about COVID, right? So you have.
I thought we were going to, Brian, but you just
you're
ruined
so
it.
close. You're so close.
I know. I ruined it. But
let me provide maybe a slightly different perspective of this. And Brian and I have only been colleagues now for 72 hours, so I don't know. I agree with. We don't want to separate from Moodle, but I do want to point out something that a lot of people don't realize, which is that even a lot of these Moodle providers. I'll take eCreators as a great example. A lot of their clients, in the case of eCreators, more than half of their clients probably don't even realize that it's Moodle under the covers.
Yep.
They're really just looking for an LMS that solves a problem, right? So,
yep.
and this played out in a very specific way when the news that eCreators was not going to be allowed to continue as a partner came out. Some clients emailed Dean and others and basically said, what is Moodle? We use LearnBook, like that's our LMS, right? So now that's not everybody. Some people are very passionate about Moodle and go to Moodle Moods, and like, so there's just, it's a really, really broad and diverse and collection in the community. And what's interesting for us to think about is how do we grow and evolve, right? Because one of the reasons that we're so excited about this consolidation strategy is what we've seen over the last several years is Moodle providers basically fight with each other about their clients and steal one from another, while Canvas and others just take overall Moodle market share, rather than actually taking what is the best product and most open product in the market and actually going out and delivering solutions that deliver at scale and really taking on some of the big guys. And so it's important that we stay close to Moodle because it's an important brand. The project has so much meaning for ed tech. But at the same time, let's not forget that we have to market to people that may not even know what Moodle is, or they just need a solution to a problem.
If I might, Phill, that if there's anything
Yep.
we've learned as well over the last 2 years with the summit, especially, is that I'm trying to think about how to put this succinctly. You were going right there. Is that the influencers that are really important to the LMS decision or the make or break of something surviving, especially in higher ed, are not necessarily the geeks in the server room anymore. That was the case 10 years ago,
Absolutely.
right? Because they controlled the conversation because nobody knew. But now, okay, I'm going to say it, with COVID, right? Especially, everyone is involved in this, right? You cannot be in learning, corporate learning. You can't be in higher education. You can't be in K through 12 now without having either opinion or an experience or some skin in the game with the platform that you're using. But even with that happening, they can't say the difference between Canvas and Moodle and Blackboard and D2L and things like that. They're just like, look, this works and it's awesome and I love it. And when it works and it's awesome, they evangelize about it. And that's where Instructure really just started eating everybody's lunch, because people became evangelical about it. And so I see this as that is the real opportunity right there, maybe for you.
Well, and there's one more opportunity I'll add to that, which is something we think a lot about, because we're based on true open source. Both Open LMS and eThink tend to be more cost-effective solutions than a Blackboard or a Canvas or a D2L, because we don't have, there's no license tied to it. It's really just a SaaS service. And what that opens up is the conversation that we've been having with many of our clients around digital transformation, which is, hey, maybe you should spend a little bit less on your LMS and a little bit more on training your faculty or getting great content or all those other things. And I think that makes that our clients are really resonating with that, because they recognize that the platform, again, the saying I share with you all the time, Stephen, an LMS never taught anyone anything, right? Like it's the content, it's the instructors that do that, and making sure that they're well equipped and they've got the right tools is incredibly important. So yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting time, and we've now, let's go here, since Brian and you brought it up, like now that the pandemic has hopefully come close to reaching its peak, good Lord, I hope so, given where things are right now, and there's some light at the end of a tunnel with a vaccine and all this thing, then there's also this question of what's next, right? And from my perspective, having an open source platform that's the most flexible in the world, that's used by the most institutions. Stephen, last time you and I shared, and I think you just posted this podcast last week, I talked about the great experimentation that was happening in real time, right? All these people that are moving online quickly, and they're downloading Moodle, or they're, doing it in SharePoint or whatever they're doing. All this experimentation has happened. Probably more than 50 or 60% of it has happened on top of Moodle, and is now going to percolate out as we go back to something that might look more like normal next year. I'm just delighted to be working on a platform that has opened up that type of experimentation, and hopefully there's a lot of people out there that are writing code and cool plugins and teaching people how to use Moodle more effectively. It just creates a better community for all of us.
Tell me this, I want to know the conversation around workplace, and now sort of my guess is that Totara is probably wondering what's happening right now. It's like, ooh, this is a really interesting development. Is this going to be a play that's going to start to eat, their market share and whatnot? Where does it's so easy for us to default to the higher education conversation, because that's where most of us have been. is there a focus in that direction as well? Because we know that so many people have been hungry for that aspect of Moodle.
I'll start and then I'll let Brian chime in, partially because Richard Wiles, the CEO of Totara, literally just texted me, I think, while we've been on the phone.
I'm telling you, it has to be there. Yeah.
No, so a couple of things, right? One, it's important to remember that Open LMS has always had a big corporate client base. We've got about 300 corporate clients before we even signed eCreators, and then with eCreators we added about another 400. So we've got about 700 corporate clients before now adding eThink, which is about 50-50 education versus corporate. So we're now in the, several hundred, more than 500 corporate clients, and those use a variety of platforms, right? We've got people just using Open LMS with some plugins. We've got people using LearnBook, which are plugins that are specifically designed for corporate. And now with eThink, we've got a Totara partnership, which we have dozens of clients that are using, and then we've got Moodle for Workplace. All of these are all based still on Moodle, and so the expertise that the team has in hosting and support really applies to all of these things. And so we want to really give our clients choice, right? The tool that works the best for them. Again, it's still going to be open source. It's still going to be based on Moodle, so we can still provide all of the expertise that we have around it. Why would we not offer those platforms for clients that need it, and hopefully make them better over time as well with our own services and our own additions on top of them to make them more effective. Brian, what do you want to add to that?
I would say that's perfect. The reason we've been out there and successful for a long time is because that's exactly what we do. We talk to a client, we listen to what the needs are, and we say, here's a couple options. We think this is going to be the best solution because you need this piece of functionality, which Moodle Workplace does better, or Totara does better, or Moodle Core does better. And now we're going to have LearnBook, which has some interesting new features that we've not had before. And then we've got all these other LTG pieces to the ecosystem, like, oh, you want a deep integration to an LRS? Well, this is probably with Watershed your best bet. Or you're going to focus more of your learning through the LXP. Well, maybe Moodle Core is enough. And maybe that's actually a better solution for you. So I think that the open source model and our service model has always been about providing great people who come in and listen to what the client wants to achieve. And then from there, they look at what solution is going to meet that. And that right now, and it could be any of those. We try to say we're Switzerland has been the philosophy of eThink. And that's worked well. And I think that that's the big value add to open source, is you can go with a couple different options of the open source. That the second thing is you can go to different providers. So, and we're pretty open about telling our clients, listen, if we're not doing the best job, then you have other options. So we're either gonna, be the best service at the best price, or you're gonna go somewhere else. And that
wait, I'll interrupt that just to say that they tell their clients that, but their service is good enough that they've had a 98% renewal rate for like 10 plus years. So it should be a no-brainer.
It should be a no-brainer.
It's easy to say that when you've got great customer service. And to be fair, Open LMS for a while didn't have great customer service. I think we made huge strides there in the last year, but that's going to be the bar that we're measured against, right? Is what is that customer experience like? Because it's absolutely true, and it should be a part of people's total cost of ownership. If we provide them a great experience, we don't expect them to go anywhere. We want to be a great partner to them.
But that competition keeps us honest, is what I always like to tell to prospects. And we're upfront with that because it is a protection for our clients, and that's enormous. So yeah, I think that's what we're excited about here, is to continue to build on that philosophy, continue to build on solution providing with 20 times more tools than we had before with the LTG umbrella and the other partnerships that they already have under the Open LMS side of the house that we did not have prior to this. That's extremely thrilling.
So what can we expect over the next sort of 90 days, 180 days? I'm assuming eThink continues to look and taste and smell, a lot like it did for the last couple of years. But what, are there significant changes? Like, you come under the brand. Are there any, big changes that we can look forward to, or how do things evolve from here?
Let Phill start with that one.
I'm still trying to figure out what eThink smells like. Partially because we've done all this negotiation, virtually. I don't actually know the answer to that question. So the long and short of it is, eThink, nothing's going to change for eThink clients in the short term, and employees are just coming on board. But we do have a vision of creating one Moodle company where the team works interactively, where we learn from each other to create the best possible services, the best possible plugins, the best possible hosting experience. And what we've already found, literally even a week ago, as we were deep in due diligence, Cheryl called and said, hey, we're having a problem with some AWS stuff around S3. What are you guys doing there? And we found something that we were doing. And then it turns out she dove in, she's like, well, actually, did you know that some of our developers are already working together on a new Redis clustering component that's going to make things perform much better? And I was like, no, I didn't know that, but that's great, right? And so the goal is to create one team, to create, you know, something that looks like one product, although it will have very different flavors if you're in corporate, or, you know, and it may have the Moodle for workplace components, it may have some of the Totara components, but we want to simplify the business a little bit just to make it more efficient and to be able to provide better service. So in the next 90 days, I don't think you'll see a ton of changes other than the teams coming together. We do have, I think, some quick wins and just, you know, some things that right off the bat are obvious that eThink does better than we do, or that we do better than eThink, and then throw eCreators into the mix, just getting some of the plugins that LearnBook has that are great for corporate, making those available to clients across Open LMS and eThink is going to be a huge step in the right direction. So there's a lot of stuff. We're going to try to shield as much as possible of that from our clients, because it really shouldn't affect their experience at all. But there's real work to be done, no doubt. In fact, you know, Brian and I were just comparing calendars, and our calendars are full of, you know, work that has to get done. Honestly, between now and January 1st, I'm not sure that Christmas break is going to look very breaky for me and Brian, because we got a lot of stuff to get done. I guess maybe I should have told him that before he agreed to this new job with us. But
that was new information. I was planning on a wonderful little, you know, fireplace and whatnot, but it looks like a Christmas with Phill here.
Sugar plums dancing in your heads or something.
I guess I'll get those sugar plums on.
I think what you do is you say, look, Dean, you know, that beach house that you have, that's the new team meeting place, you know, and instead of the Indiana,
you can't winter, get there. It's impossible. Dean called me the other night and he's like, Phill, we've been doing these like late night, early morning phone calls for so long. He's like, I literally spent half an hour trying to figure out if I could get to Indiana right now so that we could just have 2 weeks with a whiteboard and just hash all this stuff out. And he's like, you can't do it. Like, he was gonna like buy a container and put himself on a ship, and it's like you just can't do it. Nobody's getting out of Australia right now.
Yep.
I wonder why. That's interesting. I mean,
well,
as someone who came from Thailand to Mexico in the last 6 months, I know that.
Well, to be fair, Victoria has had 0 COVID cases for the last 5 weeks, so maybe they're doing something right.
Yeah, maybe that's why I say maybe you should go to his beach house, not the other.
Yeah, maybe they won't. That's why they won't let me in.
Christian, any closing conversation? These guys are busy. We've taken a lot of your time.
Yeah, just a little bit about the team and the people, and you've talked about it, and I think it would not be too different from the effort of, there was a word of, well, getting the teams together, getting them to know each other. Although, like a week ago, a couple of hours ago, these teams were sort of rivals. Now there's a team of rivals here a little bit, even though I know the LMS competitors, especially the Moodle partners, are very collegial among each other.
Yep.
Especially like in the UK, for example, I think that should be interesting. But I do wonder, and I know I can't help but wonder if there can be maybe some redundancies in roles and things.
Yeah, so a couple things. So one, we've been friends for a long time. Brian and Cheryl and I have, as well as Dean and Brian. I mean, the community is very close. We're building the culture, and the getting the right goals and vision is quite literally the most important thing that we will have to do. If we don't get that right, then this won't work together. Now, we've had some practice at this already with eCreators. We've got ways that we integrate teams now. We have something called the buddy system, where we pair up, we'll pair up folks from eThink with employees on the eCreators and Open LMS side so they can get to know each other. We've got welcome kits where we've got videos of all of our employees that they can go watch and get to know each other. it's also very weird doing this in COVID, right? Normally we would have had everybody in a room and we would have gone out for dinner or something after we announced this. Now we're doing this all on Zoom meetings, right? So it's different, but I think we've got a good approach there. I'm really excited about that. As far as redundancies right now, remember, there are definitely efficiencies to be made, but right now we're growing at a pace where we're actually more interested in hiring people than getting rid of people. And so, growth is one of those things where redundancies don't exist nearly as much when you're growing at a really nice clip. And it's been interesting. Open LMS was shrinking inside of Blackboard. We're now growing quite nicely. eCreators was growing when we bought them. That continues. eThink was growing even faster than eCreators. So now that we are growing at, I think, a decent pace, we have to make sure that that continues. But if that continues, I look at us actually growing the team rather than shrinking the team. Brian, do you want to add anything there?
Well, first of all, I fully agree. I mean, I think that the sky is the limit in terms of where we're going to take this. And I think there's going to be some pretty exciting times ahead in terms of growth of the team. Many of the team members already know each other. We've seen each other at conferences. Some of these team members have been on each other's teams in the past or have worked for Moodle HQ in the past. It's a rather, incestuous sort of ed world in the Moodle space, which has been a good thing. Everybody kind of knows a little bit about some of the main players, and tremendous respect across all sides for who we're working with, right? So if we look at, Dean's team from eCreators, I've always felt they were like a mirror image of our team, just on the Southern Hemisphere. It's very uncanny how almost exact he built the culture with Sally over there at eCreators. It feels very similar. And every time I would see him or I'd meet some of those people, I'd say, I feel like I'm in like a bizarro world. That literally feels like I'm, in an Australian version of eThink. And then with Phil's team, same thing. A lot of these guys, Braden and Pablo and Brad, they're very, very, very well respected guys that we've known for a very long time. So and then you add in the acquisitions that they made back in the Blackboard days, like Neville Siete. So you get this international flavor that is incredible, because we get clients all the time we can't service well in Spanish, and all of a sudden, boom, we've got this incredible Spanish team.
That was my next question. Is that part of the job requirement that, you've got to? I'm not doing, my friend.
No, funny story here. As part of the deal, I had to write a job description for Brian and Cheryl, and I had copied and pasted an old one to get started, as you always do, and I'd left in there, must be fluent in Spanish. And Brian responded and said, if this is the part of the deal, I'm not sure this is going to work. So I think I changed it to not required, but bilingual preferred or something like that.
Yeah. I can, if I get down there, I'm usually okay. Hablo español más o menos. Like, I know how to get around, but that's about it.